All right, so getting right back to it, what are we talking about here today? So, again, we're talking about accessibility in Microsoft Teams. Now, when I say accessibility, what is that? That is simply making a more inclusive virtual environment for everyone within your organization or people that you're working with. This can be making the content easier for other users to consume, whether that's reading, listening to it, whatever the case may be. Now, we did recently have a meeting summit here about a week and a half ago. We actually did talk about accessibility a little bit. And one of the ways that I like to go ahead and position, and I wish I could really take credit for this phrase because I think it hits the nail on the head when we start talking about accessibility, really kind of send it home, is accessibility is being invited to a party, but also be invited to dance at the party. So it's really given that sense of, hey, I really do want you here. I want you to be able to participate in every single thing that we go ahead and do. It's not simply sending out a meeting invitation to a colleague or coworker, and then in the hopes that when they do join, they're able to absorb all the information. We don't want to simply assume it. We want to be able to leverage the tools at hand so that way they have all the options available to them. And then likewise as well, when we're in the actual Teams client, chatting or posting messages within the Teams channel, what are some different tools that they can leverage as well, or even yourself too, depending on what the scenario is. And that's something we're going to be talking about. Now, I do want to make a quick point on here as we're presenting. I do have various links that are set up, and we are going to be sharing out this deck once this recording is being sent out, and all these links are going to be available to you. Specifically, we do have lots of resources available for everyone that's attending to get a little bit more information on different accessibility features within Teams, because there are quite a lot of them. Now, first thing I want to go ahead and call out is the closed captioning feature. And every single person here that's joining us can actually take advantage of this feature this very second. And I even highlighted just a moment ago, we're able to initiate closed captioning by clicking on the ellipsis or the three little dots towards the top right portion of your screen within this meeting window. Now, once you click on that, you'll see the option for the closed captioning, and you're even able to access it in various languages, and specifically up to 28 other languages to be more precise. And what that will actually do is highlight at the bottom of the screen what is one specific person actually saying. From a privacy concern perspective, those closed captions, they're not recorded in any capacity. So they show up on the screen and then they disappear. That is unlike transcriptions, and thank you, Nick, for actually calling that specific phrase out earlier when we started the recording. Transcriptions are saved, and it's a similar concept where it is interpreting everything that's being said. It's all done via artificial intelligence, where it's taking into consideration what I'm saying and actually placing it into text. So, important differentiation here: closed captioning is not recorded, whereas transcriptions, they are. Which does bring us over to a slightly different concept, and that's something called CART captioning. Now, CART, it does stand for Communication Access Real-Time Captioning. Essentially what it is, it's going to be a stenographer typing out all the phrases or transcribing everything that's being said in real time. So instead of having everything computer generated, it's all being done by another individual person. If this is something that you're not necessarily interested in, or maybe the language that's being presented in is not your native language and you'd rather use the auto-generated captions, you can actually override this feature as well by going to the exact same location that we were just talking about. And it's going to be the same for the CART captioning as well, where once again, if you click on the ellipsis, look for the option that says live captions or CART captions, which will pop up automatically. You can pick and choose which feature you would want. So something to go ahead and consider. Alrighty. Now I am going to go ahead and showcase a couple different features, but I do want to actually take a quick pause and see if we had any questions coming through in the chat that we need to go ahead and address, anything that we've already gone ahead and talked about. So on that note, Nick or Dominique, did we have any questions come through?
Hey, Walt, I didn't see any questions coming through, but Nick did share some really interesting clarifications about those closed captions versus translations.
Yeah, I think I might be the most active person in the chat. The cart capability, as Walt said, does support multiple stream ingest. What that means is your third-party cart provider can have multiple transcribers sending it into the meeting, and as Walt said, you go to the three dots, and then you can pick your language. Think of like the United Nations, where someone is speaking, and I've got 15 different translators, and they're talking into 15 different headsets. It works the same way with cart. So, sorry, Walt, this question comes up a lot. Closed captions, one spoken language. I say this meeting is in Spanish, and then I speak in Spanish, and the captions appear in Spanish. Cart, I have multiple languages and allows me to support all those. If you have other questions, just drop them in the chat.
Awesome. Thank you very much for that, Nick. And then also, too, I did want to go ahead and ask, did we want to place that poll that we were talking about earlier to try and get some ideas for what other people are thinking about for accessibility features?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and launch it now. So we've got some thoughts on accessibility based on the article that Walt shared earlier, but we'd love to know your best practices as well. I always think that all of us is greater than one of us. And so if you've seen a best practice for inclusion and accessibility in a Teams meeting, would you just drop it here in the response and hit submit? We'll wait a couple of seconds for that to pop up.
Awesome. And as people are going ahead and entering in a few comments with that, some of the things that we're going to take a quick look into is some of the different ways that we can adjust our overall outlook within the Microsoft Teams environment, right? We'll also talk about the concept of focusing within Microsoft Teams and what do I mean by that and how can we start employing a few different ideas when we are presenting various material. And then also, too, talk about some type of translation features and functionality that are available to us, or what are some native ways we can leverage screen reading ability too that we can take advantage of. All right, so I do see a couple options popping up in here in terms of, let's say, alternative text, speaking slowly. I know that one can be a little tricky for myself as I do drink way too much coffee, but that's, I think, a really good point, just because it does make it easier for people to go ahead and follow you. And then in addition to that, having various translations and alternative text available for you. So thank you very much for those people that are going ahead and entering those responses. That's some great ideas going on in there. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually back out of the presentation and let's pull up Microsoft Teams and take a look at a couple different features. Now, as I'm doing this, I want to point out a few things. First and foremost, as I'm navigating everything, one thing that I want to make sure that I'm doing from a presentation standpoint is actually calling out exactly where I'm looking or what I'm about to go ahead and click on. So for example, I'm about to open up Microsoft Teams. Pretty basic, right? I'm going to take a look towards the bottom of my screen where my taskbar is, looking for the Teams icon and give it a simple left click. So I'm doing my best to actually guide people along these different types of steps of what we need to go ahead and do. Now, for the first thing I want to showcase is actually changing the look of Teams and getting a little more contrast available to us. We can actually change up our view in the setting option for Microsoft Teams by looking towards the top right where the ellipsis is, so just to the left of my profile picture. Giving that a left click and we'll see the settings option where that little cogwheel is. So as you notice, I'm walking people through this. The whole intention is maybe somebody that doesn't have the screen up, I want to be able to give them step-by-step instructions on where they need to look or even click on. I'm painting the picture for them. But the first thing that does pop up for us is our general settings, and we have various themes available to us. By default, we do have the light theme, and we also have a dark theme available to us as well. This is actually my preferred view within Teams just because I'm in front of the computer 8, 9, 10 hours a day, and I just find it a lot easier on the eyes. However, maybe we do have some users that maybe have a little bit of a lower vision capability than I do. We also have the option for a high contrast view, which will really make everything as easy as possible to see and offer a significant amount of contrast. So as I back out of the settings menu, everything in terms of text, sections, boxes, it makes it significantly easier to see. But we do need to maybe consider about taking this a step further. If I go back into the settings icon where that ellipsis was just to the left of my profile picture, we can even actually zoom into the application. Sounds pretty easy, right? Well, this is something that's consistently overlooked. Specifically when we're looking to present our desktop or screen to somebody else, and it doesn't necessarily have to be Microsoft Teams, but just other applications in general. Zooming in to the application to make the text a little bit bigger, the windows a little bit bigger to go ahead and see. So maybe other users that are watching your presentation, they're able to really get the biggest picture, pun intended, of what's on the display so they can follow along much easier with you. Now, I may have gone in a little bit too far, so I'm going to back out just a little bit, but hopefully everyone here is starting to get the idea with this. Now, I do want to give a quick call out, and I'll even encourage some people to try this now within this meeting. And it's a common question. Being able to zoom in on somebody else's screen while they're presenting in a Teams meeting. A cool little tidbit with this, holding down the control key on your keyboard or option key if you're on a Mac, and then click on the scroll up button on your mouse to go ahead and zoom in and out of the actual screen. And it's going to let you be able to zoom in and see things a little bit more clearly or focus a little bit more clearly as well. All right, so I'm going to change my setting back to the regular default theme. And let's go ahead and talk about another concept, and specifically in terms of being able to focus while we're presenting everything. And what do I mean by that? Essentially, you want to consider bringing down or toning down the distractions of the screen itself. Now, let me minimize Teams, and you're going to notice my background. It looks pretty plain and boring, right? It's just a plain black screen. That's actually done intentionally, just because I don't want to have anything distracting up on my screen. And not only my screen, but even my camera as well. So if you're looking at me, I have a plain blurred background. Or I can maybe put up another background image that's embedded into Microsoft Teams, and we do have some simple ones that are up there. The whole intention about those is not only from a security perspective of trying to block everything out behind us, that way other people don't peek in essentially virtually, but just to help bring that focus to the person presenting. So we have a concept of focusing on the presenter and focusing on the screen that's in front of us or being virtually presented. So really the tidbit here is straying away from anything that's too flashy or too busy from a display perspective. In terms of the color of the screen itself, as long as you're offering some type of contrast, that's a good rule of thumb. Which does bring me also to another point, and we can see this with my cursor. Making it as obvious as possible for everyone to go ahead and see, and also keeping it stationary on the screen as well, unless you have to go ahead and move it. I'm not sure if you notice, but I'm actually moving my hands a lot right now, and part of that is just out of habit. But again, I'm trying to keep my hand away from the mouse, so I'm not moving across the screen so many times and distracting everyone that's watching. So I have a massive cursor on the screen, and color, as long as there's contrast, can be entirely up to you, but you're keeping it stationary. You're not moving it around quite a bit. But I do want to point out where we can find different ways to customize our cursor. Very simple to do. Go into the start button, or excuse me, the search button towards the bottom left portion of our screen. Simply type in cursor size. And we'll see the option here, mouse pointer size. Entirely up to you how you want to go about doing this for size and color, but something to go ahead and consider. Myself, I always keep it about a 3 or a 4, and I believe the default, if I remember correctly, is right about a 1. It will be a little bit different depending on the resolution from the screen that you're presenting from. In my case, I'm using a 1080p display, so 3 works out perfect. But if you have something that's a little bit higher in terms of resolution, you might need to bump it up a little bit more. So something to be aware of. But within the setting menu, I do have the ability to also change out the color for my cursor if I don't necessarily have a highlighter option like what I have on my screen right now. So you can see that yellow circle on my screen around my cursor. That's actually a third-party application that I've downloaded and installed to my computer just to make it as easy as possible for everyone to see. Because again, I'm trying to draw as much attention and have as much contrast available as possible. But if I didn't have that, I can simply change the color of my cursor to something else, green, pink, yellow, whatever, entirely up to you. Alrighty, now let's go ahead and back out of this. And then the last thing I do want to go ahead and talk about is being able to interact with other people within the Teams environment. So let's pull up Microsoft Teams again, just going down to my taskbar and pulling it up. And then sitting right in front of me, smack dab in the middle, I do see a message from one of my colleagues, Lee, who did send me a message in Japanese. Now, I'm a little rusty when it comes to my katakana and hiragana, or all things Japanese. So I might need to take advantage of a translator application that's actually built into Microsoft Teams, something that's a little bit overlooked. All I'm going to do if I want to see what this particular message is saying, with my cursor over the message, I do see all the various reactions. I can select the ellipsis, and I'm going to notice about halfway through the menu the ability to translate this message. Once I do that, I can get an actual translation of what this individual tried to tell me. This is opening the gateway to allow me to communicate and collaborate with people outside of maybe my regional office. Maybe they're on the other side of the world and English is not their native language, or they simply don't know any English at all, or in this case, I don't know any Japanese. So we can still work together in some capacity. That's a great thing to go ahead and consider. We can toggle this back and forth. So if I want to see the original message, I'm going to go right back to that ellipsis again, right at the top right portion of the message. Halfway through, I see where we see the original message, and I can get that back. Now, the last thing I want to talk about before we start wrapping things up is what if I want the computer, I want Teams to read aloud the message to me? What's something I can take advantage of that's native to the Teams app? Well, once again, if I put my cursor over one of these messages, I'm going to see the ellipsis again. And you may have already noticed it. But just below the option that says Translate, we have an immersive reader. This is actually a feature that's embedded to a lot of different applications, but what it's going to do, it's going to read aloud everything that I have on the screen within that particular message, but I even have the added functionality to adjust all the text options, whether I want to change sizing, contrasting colors, or I can even opt in for various focus modes or grammar features as well. So if I want to be able to split everything up in terms of nouns, verbs, adjectives that we see listed off to the right-hand side, without pulling in anything else, I can do all that right in here. So if we do have colleagues that maybe do have trouble reading or they have some type of learning disability or dyslexia, well, there is a solution that we can take advantage of. So don't necessarily think that this is just some type of educational tool. It can be put into place within the office as well for some users. All right. So with all that being said, one last thing I want to talk about before I pass it over is here coming up. Let me move over to the next slide. Here coming up in about a week or so on the 11th, we do have our Ability Summit. So actually, I believe that's going to be on the 10th. It's one day is going to be free for the public. And if you're a Microsoft employee, we actually do have another day that's going on with it as well. So we do have two separate dates in there. Apologize for that. But something to keep in mind is that this is going to be a free summit available to everyone to come and listen to various keynote speakers from people to help talk about all the different accessibility functions within Microsoft across a wide variety of different platforms. Now, as we hand out this deck, and I do see that Nick actually dropped the link in the chat already, we do have the option to go to the landing page or even register for the event directly through the presentation here itself for later access. All right, I do want to take a quick pause before we finish everything up. Nick, did we have any questions come through that we need to go ahead and address?
No, a couple just kind of reinforcement of you making the cursor easier to see, a little bit easier to follow along, and scanning. No, I don't think any others. Folks, if you got anything, drop it into the chat. We'll be happy to address. Walt, I'm going to drop in that that picture of the screenshot that's on the one pager, just to kind of tease the one pager. So I'm dropping in a big image into chat.
Perfect.
And then I'll drop the link into where you can get this. So that is like in one screenshot, everything that Walt just showed. So as you think about just what does an accessible Teams meeting look like, it's a collection of these capabilities. I love the invited to dance, not just to the party. I did have some middle school flashbacks when you shared that. But
you're not the only one. Don't feel bad.
A combination of these capabilities and the housekeeping we saw Walt do at the top really makes sure that everyone has a voice and an opportunity to participate. So I'll drop a link into the, this is part of the PowerPoint one pager that we post on ak.ms/meeting Mondays. I'll drop a link into that and then give us like an afternoon and we'll drop in all these resources in the recording up to ak.ms/meeting Mondays as well.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Nick. And then real quick, I did also see a comment from Terry that came through the chat utilizing the inverted feature when it comes down to the mouse. for various colors based off whatever you have in the background as well. Additionally, another great feature to take advantage of if you're trying to have as much contrast available to you. So awesome. Thank you so much for that. And then lastly, in terms of where can we find out more information and where can we learn or get all these resources, we do have a community team that we invite everyone here to join if you're not already a member, and that's going to be our team superheroes heroes group. And you can access that by going to aka.ms/join superheroes. Nice and simple, where we do post a whole variety of different content, this included. So this is going to be more of a way for you to share best practices between different organizations for how are you taking advantage of teams, implementing some of these features, or even too maybe questions that you might have when it comes to various adoption best practices as well. But apart from that, that is everything that I did have for everyone here. So I hope you learned something new and you're also looking forward to starting to apply some of these options that I showcased here for you today. So with that, take care, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day.